Hi, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Curtain Part 2 for our upcoming feature of Apart Together. My name is Pablo Siqueiros, and I am the Public Programs Associate Director. Apart Together will be a collection of performances showcasing the creative capacity and artistic expression of the members of the Minnesota Opera family. The reason this Behind the Curtain is a two-part series is because the program itself is somewhat divided into two halves as well. The first half being the resident artist showcases, which you learned about in part one of Behind the Curtain, and the second half, which features the artists of the Minnesota Opera Orchestra. And so I've invited a few members of the orchestra so that we can have a conversation about these showcases as well as life as musicians over the past year. Now, I will note that you will be seeing many more musicians in the actual showcases, but in the interest of having a more substantial conversation, we only have 4 individuals joining us today. So with that, welcome everyone.
Thank you.
So to start off, let's have each of you introduce yourselves. Let's give us your name, your pronouns, and just for fun, something new and interesting that you have learned in the past year.
Well, my name is Michele Frisch. I play principal flute in the orchestra. And this past year, although there were many difficulties, obviously, there were a lot of hidden blessings for my husband and I because we did a lot of things that I don't know that we ever would have otherwise. One of them was hitting the hiking trails of the Twin Cities and outstate Minnesota. We had no idea that there were quite as many that close, that accessible. And it became a really wonderful passion and it led to something else. And that was my project, and I'll talk about that later.
Mhm. Any favorite trails that you found?
I love the Afton Trail. And
Yeah.
there is one far northwest called the Crow Hassan
Mhm.
Trail, and it's prairie, woods, water. It's absolutely beautiful. So I go back to that a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Well, speaking of the outdoors, my name's Laurie Petroconus. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I'm a violinist, principal second in the opera. And I wasn't going to go this route, but then Michele just made me think of this that a complete blessing of the pandemic was from like almost April through August. When my kids were distance learning and I was distance teaching, my parents have a cabin up on Burnside Lake up near Ely, and we spent the entire summer up there. And I mean, usually we're up there for a week or two out of the year, and to have that kind of I mean, to have that experience just has never happened before and probably will never happen again. So that was a really great thing. My initial answer was going to be, I hope that I've learned how important being with the people that you love and sharing things together. I hope I don't start to take things for granted when things come back. That I can still, because now if I happen to go out for coffee with a friend, it just feels like the best thing in the world. And to be able to play the first time I got together to play chamber music with my quartet, that was the best thing in the world. And I want to keep that feeling alive inside of me as long as I can.
I love that. Absolutely. Kind of cherishing those moments a little bit more now. All right. Who would like to go next?
Go? Would you like
I
to
guess
go?
me. I'm Phil Ostrander. I play first trombone in the opera, but I'm probably better known for my abilities to chauffeur the concertmaster of the opera orchestra, who happens to be my wife, Allison. So I guess what have I picked up over the last year? I've become quite good at video editing, and that's has to do with a large amount of teaching and conducting. So I've learned a lot about Adobe Premiere, and then also I've become typically my wife and I are performing so much we miss about maybe 2/3 of our children's youth hockey season. I would say we make it to about 1/3 of their games and or scrimmages. We went to all of them.
Nice.
And We are hockey parents. And I didn't I realized that when you go to just a third of a youth hockey season, you're not really a hockey parent. And so we now know what that means. And it's a lot of hockey when you have two children, ages 10 and now 13, that are both youth hockey players. We spend a lot of time in the rink. I can tell you about nearly every ice rink in the Twin Cities.
Wow. And speaking as someone who is not from this area and from a much warmer climate in San Diego, uh, ice hockey is a true passion of that is very unique to this area, and I had not experienced that until the last couple of years, and it's impressive.
I grew up playing the sport, and I finally had to quit after my fourth broken arm. And you would think that this would discourage me from wanting our children to play hockey. No, apparently not.
All right. Well, welcome, Rebecca.
Rebecca Arons, she, her, hers, and I am a cellist in the Minnesota Opera Orchestra. I think Laurie and I may have joined the corps of the orchestra around the same time. Laurie, is that right? I mean, it's been a couple of decades. I don't want to age us or anything.
Like 25 years around there, 27 years,
I
yeah.
wasn't going to say it, but so we have really been with the orchestra and watched it grow over many decades. I've been thinking, listening to the rest of you, I had a long time to think about really, I had the planned answer of what COVID has taught me, and I think, or what I've really taken from it. One is I really appreciate having a pantry now. I never had a pantry really before. You know, I would always just, oh, I'll just run out to the store and get something, and having that just, basically closet full of food, it just turns out to be a good thing, even when you can go to the store. So I've sort of become the family chef, and I've always enjoyed cooking, but usually if you have to play a lot of gigs at night, like you're kind of just like, okay, guys, there's that spaghetti there on the stove, see you later, got to go to work. And so it's been kind of nice to actually enjoy, being home at dinner, actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the one thing, just to tie into what Laurie said about appreciating things, is not playing live in front of people, doing Zoom lessons. I think I did the first, what I'm going to call live performance in quartet played outside and back in the summer, but it had been many, many months through winter not playing anything live. And I played with my son cello duets for my grandparents at their nursing home. And I wasn't really even thinking of it as a performance. I was thinking this is just a nice thing to do. And when I felt that there were people there, I became really emotional because I realized that how much that meant to me to play with an audience, breathing and feeling in the same room. So I'm just grateful that we're going to get back to that. And I didn't realize how much it meant to me.
Yeah. Oh, that hits me right here. And this leads me right into our first question here, which is, what has this year been like for you, like as an artist specifically?
Well, hard.
I mean, in a way, it's been horrible. When your livelihood or at least a lot of what you do to to make money for your family, for your inspiration, when that's been cut off, it's very depressing. But if you flip it over and you can see how much this art means to all of us, that we have all found ways to keep going. We've all found ways to play with different people, different groups, or practicing on your own. That I think that is in a way inspirational. That it hasn't, you could have just left the violin for a year, but I don't think any of us have. That we've all needed it in our lives in some way, and so continue to find outlets to either play for people or play with people or use music to soothe or calm, different things. But yeah.
Yeah.
I guess all of us in the opera orchestra are relatively disciplined people that are used to seeking out musical opportunities as freelancers. We are used to seeking out musical opportunities on our own. So regardless of whether the phone's ringing or not, we're going to find some people to play with, and that are available and interested. But the big problem with the pandemic is that you couldn't do that. You got to do it kind of alone.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that that for me is the most attractive part of what we do. It's spending time with these people who I love making music with, and I uh, craved that so much for the past year. I had an experience similar to what Rebecca was talking about, in that we went and played the opera trombone section. The people that you saw, that you're going to see in the video,
Mhm.
the members of the trombone section, we went and played for Henry Charles Smith, who is a former conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra, an assistant conductor. We went and played in the back of his nursing home. Uh, and that was just the same experience. Hadn't played for anybody, but here is my childhood trombone hero, the person that, is the reason. He's exactly who I wanted to sound like my whole career. I got to go and play for him with three of my best friends. And that was like the coolest concert I've ever played. There wasn't money changing hands. It wasn't a gig per se. It was just a chance to like celebrate this person that we all really admired and respected together. Um, I realized that those performances are really important. So as crummy as many of the aspects of the year have been, there have been some highlights in there that never would have happened. We would have found some reason not to do that. And it was great to have a reason to do it.
That sounds incredible. Thank you for sharing.
I like that, Phil. I like what you said, that musicians will find a way to play with each other. We will find a way to play and be musicians and artists because it's in our blood, it's what we do. And there will be different things, even through the opera, the opera miniatures. That was so much fun to work on. The project that Rebecca headed up in the spring, Dvorak's Song to the Moon, and recording that was a wonderful experience. And then my husband Roger is a violinist. He's retired. He was the former associate concertmaster with the Minnesota Orchestra. So he and I found some projects that, like Phil said, we never would have had time to do before. And we were able to give a benefit recital in September outside for the music programs of the Austin Public Schools. And on Friday, we're going to give another benefit recital for the University of Northwestern for their Youth Academy music program. Now, those times were right smack in the middle of when we would have been busy. But because of COVID and because we're not playing as much, here's this great opportunity to play together, to give these recitals, and just to do it because it's a great thing to do and we're playing together. So yeah, I like that. That's a good point, Phil.
Oh, Rebecca. Oh, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
About now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, just what has come out of COVID. So for example, here we are talking about what it's like to be in the opera orchestra, or what we're like, or what our lives are like. And this isn't, I think people know the orchestra's down in the pit, but it's kind of nice to be able to talk about it, as being part of the greater opera community. And I think in a way, we won't come out as a company, we won't come out the same out of this, because we will have done things like this where we're actually exploring, what everyone does besides playing the opera and what they bring to it when they all come together.
Mhm.
And Phil, I was thinking about what you were saying about the joy of playing with people, because you get to see them and you get to hang out with them. And there is a lot of fun that goes on in the orchestra pit. We can't talk about all of it here, especially the brass section.
We have more fun than you
There's some
do.
stories I'm not going to tell. about the brass section. However, you know, I just realized through all of this that my friends are my colleagues. Those are who my friends are. So when we weren't working and we weren't seeing our friends, and just missing those simple things like, you know, going out for a beer after the opera. You know, I know the brass section is back there texting during their long rest, where are we going for a beer after? I know that's going on. And then I have to wait till the show's actually over to ask you, where is everybody going? But
No comment.
Yeah, a whole lot of chocolate changes hands in the wind section. That's all I'll say. Before, during, and after.
Oh, so
Uh,
funny. So-
I'm not going to incriminate myself. I'll only
No,
I'm
no,
only
you-
blaming. I won't say his name, but I'm only blaming the second trumpet player. It's his fault.
I'm not here. We can talk about him if you want. Nothing you can do about it.
Oh, so good. I'm sure there's like so many stories that we just don't get to hear about in terms of what really goes on down there in the orchestra pit.
Well, I encourage everybody who's watching this, you know, when we're back in the Ordway and we're back playing live, come say hi. Come say hi at the pit, and we'll tell you some stories then.
Perfect. I hope they take you up on that. So moving on to the actual the Apart Together showcase itself, I guess tell us about what each of your showcases entails, and you know, why you chose these pieces, what do they mean to you? Yeah, everything. I want to hear it all. Let's start with Michele.
I like what Laurie said about this year of COVID giving us all an opportunity to kind of narrow down and winnow out what is really important. When you're in a schedule, and the opera schedule is not as demanding as, say, the Minnesota Orchestra schedule, but there's a tremendous amount of preparation that goes into an opera. The services are 3 hours long, not 2.5 hours. And it's a very, very intense set of performances. And this year of kind of being off from not being on site has sort of, at least for me, I've kind of come to terms with what is really, really important. And opera plays a big part of that. And in the spring, when we hit the trails walking, I was listening to a lot of bird song. It's the spring now. Stick your head out the window and you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. March 13th was our first hike. I heard a lot of birds, and I've always been interested in photographing birds, seeing birds, hearing bird song. And it's not so ironic that the flute is really the instrument in the orchestra that has traditionally represented birds and bird song. So my worlds started to come together in a way that was so much fun. I started to photograph birds while out on hikes. On the trails, near the lakes, in backyards, I'd get in the car, run out with my camera, and it became quite a passion. And I not only saw them and saw their beauty after a lifetime of developing my ear for music, but I was starting to hear their different songs. And when this project came up, my first thought was, why don't I just combine those things that I love? And that's exactly what happened. I winnowed through thousands of photographs from the whole year of COVID, spring, summer, fall, winter, into spring, found my favorites. I recorded a couple of new things and pulled a couple of pieces from CDs that I had done with the principal harpist of the Minnesota Orchestra, Kathy Kinzel. And I took a couple of live performances, little snippets from University of Northwestern. I spent 25 years there teaching. I'm 40 years with Minnesota Opera. And it's as if these worlds, this new love and passion and music, which has always been part of my life, just came together. And so with my husband Roger's help, we created a video of those birds and their bird song and pieces that I chose that would complement that. And it feels like this year was not wasted. This year was a really wonderful time for a new passion and recognizing old passions, a lifelong of making music. So it's been really, really fulfilling. I think it's a wonderful project. And I would venture to say that everyone who participated in it drew from their past, from their present, from things that they want to do in the future that may be different because of what they learned this year. And this bird video, it's a little hard to describe. I call it a flutist's aviary, or a fluter, a flutter. And I wrote a little thing to introduce it. I'm just going to read it because it describes best what I did, and then we'll move on. A fluter, a flutter. I fell in love with birds during the pandemic. Free of virus fears on the trails, parks, and backyards of Minnesota, I spotted them in all of their wondrous variety, photographed them, and paired the images with my own recorded music. The flute is most often the voice of the bird in orchestral music. This past year, I was a fluter, a flutter in nature, and by God's grace, capturing a whole new world of birdsong and winged beauty. And I'm just glad to have done this project so that I can look back, and I have this chronicle of what this year of COVID, this pandemic year was like. So definitely a pandemic project. Yeah, thank you.
That sounds really wonderful. And I'm so glad to hear that you were able to sort of mix kind of your life outside of music with your life in music, which I feel like is something that a lot of people are discovering this year in particular. That sounds wonderful.
Which is easier to do when there isn't a performing schedule with performances on top of each other. Totally. That is wonderful. People need to make a living. It's what we do, but how wonderful to just experiment with some other things for a year. I'm very grateful for the year, actually.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Laurie, tell us a little bit about yours.
I can't wait to see yours, Michele. It sounds really, really awesome. I'm on 2 of these videos, so I'll talk a little bit about them. But when we first, were given this opportunity, it was like the opera orchestra has this breadth of talent in it. And I was like, this is an opportunity that we want to find as many ways for as many of us to be able to share their music, share their talents. And so I was trying to figure out a way to involve my second violin section. And there are 5 of us that are core members. And I knew of a Vivaldi concerto that's written for 4 violins. And it just so happened that one person was very involved out of town with their parents. And so she's like, I really can't play. I don't have my violin right now. But I was like, well, what can we do to include all of us? And tying it in with how can we let the opera family, all the donors and friends, know about these people in the pit that are making the music. So we decided to do, as well as the 4 people playing the concerto, a sort of an interview section that's just really extremely well done. My sound partner Elise put it together, and we're just letting you into what it's like to be a second violin player. Like, if you like to hold long notes on the G string, or if you like to play offbeats better, or who's the first person to arrive in the pit, or who's the last person to arrive in the pit, or some of the fun things that happen in the violin section, and just so you could see and hear all of us individually, to know us a little bit better as people, and then also as players. So that is one of the projects that you can view. And then the other, Beck and I are in a string quartet called 4 Voices String Quartet that all 4 of us, Allison is the concertmaster, and Susan Janda, our violist, is in the opera orchestra as well. So all 4 of us are opera members, and we've been together for 29 years, I believe, a long time, and we've done a lot of different things. and so throughout this whole pandemic, we've been, I mean, these are your best friends. These are the people that know everything about you. I mean, they've watched us all give birth, get married, or we got married first, then we gave birth, and now our kids are getting married, and so our rehearsals usually involve, meeting at Susan's house and Susan preparing a lovely meal for us, and we talk and eat for about the first hour and a half, and then it's like, okay, now we got to get to work and play a little bit, and so we've left a lot of that. We've done just more rehearsals, but we've had a couple. Used it as an opportunity to, what do we want to play? What do we want to showcase? And we're four women, and we've latched on to a couple female living composers, and one is Carolyn Shaw, and I left my notes in the other room, so I can't tell you a lot. Carolyn Shaw, a lot about her, but she's the youngest winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Music, I think in 2013, maybe, for her partita for 8 voices. And she just writes just in an amazing way, uses a lot of different techniques, a lot of different sounds, a lot of different kinds of pizzicatos, something we call the squishy bow sound, because it has you play with very, very light left hand pressure, and then just have your bow sort of skim the string, so it sounds, it's no pitch, it's just sort of like a sound. It sounds like we're not playing, but we are we moving our bow? And so we recorded 2 of these pieces that she wrote for all of you. So those are the 2 projects, and I know you'll really like them, and I'll let Becca talk a little bit more about them.
Yeah, well, let's go to Rebecca.
All right, I'll just pick up from there. Just to follow what Laurie said, just to have our quartet was already rehearsing. We scheduled weekly rehearsings. We found a space where we could socially distance and wear masks and open some windows. And I mean, this just was like my lifeline to music was my quartet, because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't get to keep playing with my quartet. And that this recording of Carolyn Shaw just kind of came organically out of that. We had done a performance at the end, I think it was our last in the spring. It had been a little while, and we were trying to figure out how to get some direction into our rehearsal. And so this project gave us a real purpose, and knowing that we were going to have to record it and do a video, it made us, focus, which is really one of the things I struggled with through COVID is, just having to have a purpose. So we've really enjoyed recording those 2 pieces, and I think that people will enjoy them. They're very very cutting edge and interesting, but also very accessible, I think, for listeners. The other piece that I participated in was a trio with piano, clarinet, and cello by the living female composer Paola Prestini, who you may all know because right when when the lockdown started, the opera was right about to put on her opera Edward Tulane, which we hope is going to happen in the future, but introduced us to her. And so we were really excited to do this little piece called Spell with Andrew Sun, pianist, and Karen Meffert Nelson. Karen was the one who really suggested doing this, and she actually reached out to Paola to talk to her about the piece, which is another really exciting thing about playing living composers. You can just call up the composer and say, can we check this note, or what did you really mean here, or just tell us a little bit of something, and then it becomes extra inspiration for the performance. It just made it really fun, just to feel like we could do that, and then have the composer express their appreciation. Thank you for performing my piece. It's kind of special.
Yeah, we don't necessarily get thank you notes from Puccini or Mozart or anybody. Phil, tell us a little bit about your piece.
Sure. If you playing trombone in the opera orchestra is a little bit different. I mean, Laurie plays 100% of the notes when we play an opera. Rebecca probably plays 95% of the notes. Michele probably plays, I don't know, 60% of the notes of an opera. We play something like 3. So the way I describe playing in the opera orchestra is kind of the trombone section is kind of like the field goal kickers. We sort of come in at the end of the game, and you know, you can you might be the hero, you might not. Just depends on how things are going that day. So our experience in the orchestra is different.
And you need that beer afterward.
There's
I
always
would I
the
will
ensemble chorus.
I would tell you that I would gladly prefer. I would all of us, the trombone players, would much prefer to be playing like 75% of the time. It's a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a different type of concentration and a sort of a difficult endeavor in some ways. I've watched scores go by. I listened to the greatest singers you ever heard, and watch my colleagues play all this beautiful music. It's fantastic. So when I decided that we should probably try and do something as a trombone section to participate in this. It's 2 parts to the project. One is that I wanted to choose some music that was related to opera, and in fact, we did arrangements of 2 sort of portions of different Handel operas. And so typically the trombones would be politely invited not to play on these operas. But they were rearranged for trombone trio, so orchestra and singer, and we synthesized that together. And then I also thought that this would be a good experience for all 3 of us to sort of learn the tech of remote recording. So what would normally have taken us, I don't know, about an hour to record together in person, took us really dozens of hours to do this short 4-minute, piece. You had to build a click track and a MIDI version of the piece to play along with. It has to be in time. You got to farm that out to all 3 of us, and we recorded it in our homes with different microphones. That has to come back, and you've got to sort of play with it a little bit to make sure it lines up right, because everybody's recording level's a little different. Ship it back out, and then we have to get the video that goes with that. Then it comes back again and we do video editing again. I mean, it just took forever. But it was a great project. I had seen, dear friends put together projects like this, and I was like, this is a good chance for me to learn how this works. And now I do. So that's what to expect in our project.
Oh, that sounds awesome. That sounds really great. So, I mean, with all of these showcases being so different from one another, and obviously there's a lot of more showcases that we won't get to talk about in this particular conversation, but what do you hope that audiences get from this program as a whole?
They hear the opera orchestra as an entity when they come to a performance, but it might make a listener think that there are 40 to 60 individual stories going into whatever opera we're performing, that we're bringing different things musically, we're bringing different things from our personal lives, and the fact that we play cohesively at all is a miracle. And it just might, I've always thought that for a listener to understand that with the disparate voices of not only the instruments, but the personalities that come together in a set of rehearsals and coalesce and make a performance, thanks also to the talents of the conductor, we create something out of individual stories every single opera. And I think there's a fascination with how things are put together. It's why people love to have backstage tours of any opera company. And I think maybe this will give a little bit of personality and life to the orchestra, which is unique in arts organizations. We're not ballet, we don't dance on the stage, we don't sing on the stage, we don't play on the stage when we're doing our job. We're in a pit where we're not seen, where we're needing to create something beautiful with great ensemble. And I think it's just a little bit of extra insight for any audience member to see that all these stories are coming together and making a performance.
I think that's totally true, Michelle. I mean, that's why, for you as a listener to watch these people perform for you, to play for you, to hear them talk to you, and then to be able to go to an opera and look down in the pit and see, oh, there's that second violinist, and to feel a connection. I think that's what, and maybe another question, but like that's what music is really about. It's about connecting people together, often through emotion, different kinds of emotion. But that's why we miss when we're just doing these video performances. There's a little bit of connection that's lost because we're missing that other side of the triangle. We might be performing with someone and getting a little bit of a connection personally, but like we're missing the person we're performing for. And so I think this just helps build that community and build that connection between our audience and the orchestra, and just for the donors to see what a great, amazing group of people that are down there in the pit. So that's what I hope people gain from this.
I'm hoping that we continue to do this type of thing where, even when we're back to our normal, that we continue this type of exploration and talking to each other. And I would be really curious to know from the folks who are watching this and who watch our musical presentations what they think, because kind of just circling back to what I said before, just putting things out is not fully satisfying. We want to be able to participate with the audience. And so I don't know if there's a way for us to get any feedback from this, but it would be so nice to know, not only, if you enjoyed it, but more questions, even for us as individuals. If you were able to ask us questions right now and you just dying to know something, I think we'd love to be able to connect with our audiences that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And because these are posted on social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, I really do hope that audiences take advantage of those comment sections to ask those questions and to interact with the video itself, and pose questions, pose feedback, to really build that relationship, so that it isn't just one way, just a video putting out there and all that. Phil, what do you hope the audiences get from this?
I wanted to mention one thing. I'll get there. I'm getting there. I guess when you go to an opera, or if I was an audience member, you don't realize like it's an enormous undertaking. My role as first trombone player is like half of 1% in what goes on for a production like this, which involves all these awesome stage hands and set builders, and orchestra members and singers and chorus members, conductors, vocal coaches, pianists. It's just like gigantic, and people to advertise for it. I mean, it just goes, but the more you kind of have an attachment to all the different parts of the opera, I think that enhances the experience as an audience member. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that interview. I watched the first trombone player. He's kind of funny. I remember. Oh, that's the cellist that did this and that. I just think I hope that it's a reason to come back to see the opera again, if that makes sense, or to come for the first time if you haven't. So certainly on behalf of the orchestra, we're grateful to have this opportunity to participate, and we're glad that it was offered to us. There is at times a degree of anonymity when you're in the pit, and it can feel high at times, where you're just like, I played my 4 notes, and maybe people noticed if I played or didn't. But this really gives us a chance to be fully vested participants in what we're trying to do as a company, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. So I wanted to say it that way. Thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it kind of speaks to that relationship, because when you're anonymous, you can't build that. So hopefully when we do come back, people do take that opportunity to either during the performance or after a performance. Maybe they catch you all grabbing a beer afterwards. And
Yeah, well, in terms of anonymity, if you hear someone miss a note, it wasn't me. It was the other trombone player.
So I'll close with one sort of last question. And maybe this is a little bit more bigger picture philosophical question, but in your opinion, what is the role of art or music in times of crisis like we've been in the last year? I mean, Laurie, I heard you kind of start to go.
I was going on the community thing, and I think, and I think that's totally true. I would say the other part of my life is teaching, and I've had so many parents of students saying that having that violin lesson, having music, then those students still be able to hang on to the music that's in their lives and still be able to play, even when it felt like the world was crumbling around them, that was extremely important to them. And I've seen so many improvements in students. I mean, families that really made tremendous gains this year, that holding on to music was something that was dearly important and that they valued. And so I think that speaks to the role of art in our lives, that especially in a time of need, a time of sadness, a time of discouragement, or whatever you have, that it's something that you can turn to.
I think there is a lot of history in the world, even if you just go back 100 years, that supports the idea that when people are in pain, when they're suffering, when there seems to be very little hope about how to get comfortable or even survive, that there is a constant, and that is that people express themselves through beauty, that people search for beauty and they highlight beauty because it is something that lets you know that the world is okay and it's going to be okay. I think of the art that came out of the Holocaust. I don't know if you read the book, The Inextinguishable Symphony, and the art that came from people who were suffering, which is just really, really beautiful. I think the desire to express yourself and create beauty is an overpowering human desire. And among my colleagues across the whole nation, I've seen this again and again. Phil talked about this steep technology learning curve. Well, we've all embarked on it to some point because it connects us with our colleagues in the Philadelphia Orchestra, in the Met Opera Orchestra, in San Francisco, who have just all put out these beautiful, expressive videos, either individually or in chamber groups or as an orchestra. I think it's a very powerful desire to admire beauty and to express beauty. And these projects that Minnesota Opera has undertaken this spring, the opera miniatures, and this Apart Together, and even the Britain, Albert Herring, coming up with a small orchestra, are all, in my eyes, beautiful attempts to frame a difficult period in everybody's lives with beauty that's produced just by people. Opera stories don't come from a void. They're people's stories. And I hope what people get out of this is, oh yeah, here's an orchestra. There are stories coming from there. So I think all of these projects that we've done and talked about are our need to create a beautiful thing out of our gifts and our talents, and to share that with others.
Beautifully put. Rebecca, you were going to say something?
Oh, I didn't know can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to pick up on that, I would say also equally important is for people to be able to express their pain. and their hope. And really, there's no more direct way for people to do that, either by creating or listening to music. It just kind of, it goes straight in. And I'm hoping that, people will not take for granted music and musicians who make it, and that we'll come out of this as a society, you know, being even more appreciative of the importance of music and musicians
Mhm.
in our lives.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I can say it any better than my colleagues have just said it. I think it was Michele that mentioned that how teaching has played an incredible role in what's gone on for the past year. And that's my day gig, is conducting concert bands and teaching trombone players. And I guess I didn't realize, I knew it was taking its toll on me as a performer for sure. But when you spend all day, for nearly 6 months online with your students, trying to inspire them to continue to play music and thinking it's worth it, and it being a struggle to just get to play in person. When I was finally with my students able to make music in small numbers with small groups with tons of safety protocol, I've never seen people more relieved in my whole life to play in an unusual situation, but it did not matter. They were wearing belt covers and masks and they were 12 feet apart, but just to be able to play with 4 other people, I've never seen people more elated in my whole life. And so after spending 20 years teaching, I just didn't realize how important music was until I saw the reaction of people having had it taken away. And when you get it back, it's just an incredibly powerful medium for people to express pain and anguish and happiness and joy. And you get to experience all that when you play it and when you listen to it. And it's just giving people a chance to express themselves through listening and performing. That's what I'm hoping they get.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all put all of your thoughts very beautifully. So I just want to say, thank you to the 4 of you for spending this time with us. And I look forward to hearing each of your showcases and the showcases of your colleagues as well. I believe by the time that this video goes out, it will still be streaming for a few more weeks. So do take the time, everyone, to watch the Apart Together showcases, both for the orchestra members and the resident artists as well. I hope to continue to have these types of conversations with members of the orchestra. This was lovely. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day.